Well, good morning, everybody. This is Billy Trout with the Tennessee Department of Revenue's Taxpayer Education section. And on behalf of our Commissioner David Giarchino and the staff in Taxpayer Services and the Department of Revenue, we want to welcome you to today's presentation of the new business workshop. We're glad to have you on board with us today. We've got well over 100 of you with us, and the number keeps growing as we begin our recording right now of this presentation. And I have the very lovely and talented Katie Julian with us. She's going to walk you through this wonderful material that we've got for you this morning. And alongside me monitoring chat this morning, we're going to have our Assistant Director, Dan Vinson, who is eagerly awaiting your questions. And Katie will give you some of the logistics here in just a second, but I just wanted to welcome you and thank you for reaching out to us to try to get assistance on your taxes. The state has almost 30 different kinds of taxes, and that's a lot, and it's a lot to keep up with. We're not going to be able to talk about all 30 of these, thank goodness, today, but we're going to give you a good opportunity to get your feet wet and to probably even more importantly, find out where to get more information. And that's one of our focal points today. So with that, I'll go ahead and get on mute and let Katie take over and begin the process and tell you a little bit more. Thanks, Katie.
Great. Thank you, Billy. And thanks to you all for being with us today. Just the fact that you are here means that you care enough about your business to worry about the minutia, right? This is the stuff that's not fun. You went into business because you're passionate about selling something, a service or a product, not because you want to deal with this kind of stuff, right? But it is inevitable to have to deal with it. And hopefully we can take a little bit of that guesswork out of it for you and explain a little bit about how all of the tax stuff works with regards to your business here in Tennessee. So just to go through a few things here on your screen in front of you before we get started, we have found if you have audio or video issues, we have found the easiest way to deal with that is to go out and come back in. But you can also try the links here, WebEx support or the technical resource guide. By the way, all of this information you can get to in a PDF format. There's a link to it up in the chat, but also you can get to it, the second bullet down here, by going to tn.gov/revenue, clicking on taxpayer education and then new business workshop, and you'll see this participant guide there. The links that you're going to see, the hyperlinks and the different resources we have. You cannot click directly on your WebEx screen to get to those links, but you will be able to click to those links from the PDFs. So also right before we went live, I saw a question in the chat about, is this being recorded and where can I find a video of it? Yes, it is being recorded, and you can find a video of it in this exact same place, the tn.gov/revenue. Click on taxpayer education and then new business workshops. We'll have that posted probably by later today or tomorrow morning. This is a fairly large file, so it might take several hours to load up to my WebEx site, but we'll have it out there by the morning at the latest. It is a long webinar. It's about 3 hours long, maybe a little bit shorter. We will have at least one break. We'll just kind of see how that goes. We are going to keep the chat open during the webinar. Your chats can come. Let's see, I'm going to switch that over. We'll have you send your chats directly over to the panel. Actually, we'll just keep it open right now. We'll keep it open to everyone. Just make sure you don't put any sensitive information about your business, any account numbers or anything like that in the chat. That would be great. So also regarding the chat, if you could try to keep your questions to the topic we're talking about at the moment, because we're going to get to a lot of stuff. We're going to be talking about stuff before your business gets started, getting it set up straight, talking about a few different major tax types, and then we're going to be talking about TINTAP and other resources. So lots to cover. If you have questions about what we're talking about, put those in, and if we have time at the end, we'll have a time for Q&A as well. All right, so this new business workshop here in April 2024, we do offer this workshop quarterly. The next one will be on July 10th. Like I said, the video for this one will be up for the next few months, though. We do make little changes to this periodically as there are changes in laws and as we just kind of tweak the materials. So there will be another one of these just in a few months if you want to join us for that one as well. Again, as I mentioned, the stuff we're going to be going over today, the steps to setting up your business. How do you dot all your I's and cross all your T's, right? We'll be sharing some good resources about how to get started on the right foot and just to make sure that everything's lining up correctly. It can be so confusing where to go for what. I've had friends start up businesses even before being in this as a professional with the Department of Revenue. It's just, it's really confusing. So I feel your pain. We're just one agency within the state of Tennessee Department of Revenue, but you got to go to a lot of different places, right? Sometimes Secretary of State, your clerk's office, Department of Commerce and Insurance, Labor. There's lots of different places to go, and it can be overwhelming. So hopefully we can take a little bit of that guesswork out for you. Also, we're going to be discussing the basics on the major tax types. Pretty much business tax, sales tax, and franchise excise tax. We'll show you where to find resources about some of those other taxes. Like Billy said, we've got over 30, and most of these, they all apply to businesses. So we are a very tax-friendly state. Even though a lot of these taxes are on businesses, it's still we're still considered a very easy state to live in and run a business in, and we're proud of that. But some of the burden does fall on you as a business to collect and remit these taxes, and there's lots of them, but we'll take some of that guesswork out of that as well for you. Then finally today, we're going to talk about navigating our website and TINTAP, which is our online filing and online tax hub for you. So we'll be going over all of that information today, but starting with setting things up correctly. We have got, it's not brand new now. I think it's been around for a year or two. I don't even know, time flies, but we've got a hub on our website now that's just for new businesses, as well as a checklist where you can go through. There's a link to that checklist, but I'm also going to take a little detour here and take you over to our website and show you this For New Businesses website. So let's see here. Pull this in front of me. So you should see my browser now. This is our tn.gov/revenue. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger without too much. How's that? Okay. tn.gov/revenue, our website. We'll navigate through it later, but the first place I want to take you is for businesses here. It's the tile towards the bottom of the main page for businesses, and then click on the tile that says for new businesses. This is the page I was telling you about. This is the step-by-step worksheet that is kind of a checklist for you. But we're not going to go through each of these tiles right now, but I just wanted to briefly show you the first step is going to be setting up your business. Scroll down here, establishing business name, address, structure. Don't want to make you busy here, but just showing you what all is available to you there. We'll talk about some of that here in a minute. Getting your licenses and permits, establishing your tax accounts. Are you exempt from any of these taxes? How to register for them, and then when the taxes are due. If you are a new business, if you haven't yet started or have started and not too far along, or even if you're here because you've been operating for a while but still have questions, go to this page. One thing I like to tell people is if you realize whether you're listening to this webinar today or a recording of it, or at any point, if you think, I think I may have messed something up and maybe I'm not set up right, stop at that moment and reach out to us. That is where the sooner we can help you. It happens, y'all, more often than you would think because it's confusing stuff. It happens where you're set up wrong, you registered with the wrong entity ID number, or something just gets amiss at some point in getting all of this set up in all the different places. If you realize that, it's never too late to stop, and we can fix it. It may be might take just a minute to get it fixed and do some legwork. We might have to do some legwork, but it's worth it to stop and reach out to us. We help people do this all the time, y'all. So it is better to do it now than to do it once you get a letter in the mail saying you owe taxes for an account you didn't even realize you set up or something like that. So just wanted to share that with you. So I'm going to go back over to the slides. we'll come back over to the website plenty of other times. But that is the new business page that we have set up for you. Hopefully you'll find that helpful. This next slide, these are some pieces of information that you're going to find on that new business page, but we're just going to briefly go over some of these things. Business structure and entity type, we actually have a slide dedicated to that that's coming up next. Same with licenses and permits needed, because those are two areas that cause a little bit of confusion. So we're going to dedicate a few minutes to those, each of those those first two bullets here in just a few minutes. But the next thing, business name and addresses, very important. You can visit the Small Business Administration website for tips on selecting your business name. The Secretary of State's website also, let's see here. They have a business name availability database that you might find helpful too. You can search to see if your business name is already in use. You want to make sure, you see in this blue box here in front of you, you want to make sure that you're determining these factors before you're getting started so that your information is consistent across all the different agencies that you're having to deal with. We'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but if you're a sole proprietorship, your tax account is going to be under your legal name, not a business name. But if I started a business and I was a sole proprietorship, it would be under Katie Julian and my social. But then I would have a DBA, a doing business as Katie's Clothes or whatever. But you definitely want to make sure that your business name and any addresses associated with your business are uh, consistent amongst all the different agencies that you're registering with. Now, when it comes to addresses, a lot of businesses, especially in this day and age, especially post-COVID, are home-based businesses. If that is the case, if you have a home-based business, then your home address is the address that needs to be used for the location-based tax accounts, which we'll talk about that a little more later, but business tax and sales tax, they need to be registered with your home address if you're a home-based business. And that is because a lot of a large portion of the tax revenue that comes in for your business is going to get allocated back out to your local jurisdiction. So we do not accept a post office box. You also cannot use a mailing service box. I know sometimes you've got, a UPS store or something like that. There may be a street address associated with that, but that is also not the way you're supposed to register in terms of your address. Obviously, if you've got a brick and mortar storefront, that's the address you use to register these location-based addresses. You can also enter in when you register a mailing address, which if you want to get your mail to a different place, now that can be a PO box. A primary address is another term you'll see when you're registering, and that is where your books and records are kept. If you're a small business, a lot of times your location address, your mailing address, and your primary address may all be the same place, right? Maybe it's your home, maybe it's your storefront. But if a lot of larger corporations and larger businesses, maybe they have their primary address, so where their books and records are kept, maybe that's in another state somewhere. But those are some terms you'll see when you're registering. And again, just want to repeat this, a business's location address cannot be a PO box. All right, do you need to register with the SOS? That is not an emergency call out, that is the Secretary of State. So any corporation, limited partnership, limited liability company or LLC, or business trust that is chartered or organized in or doing business in Tennessee must register with the Secretary of State and file annual reports with the Secretary of State. That's also going to prompt the necessity for you to have a franchise and excise tax account. So we do not give advice to businesses about whether you should be registered with the Secretary of State. That's going to be up to you. Hey, Billy, do you have something to add to this?
I most certainly do. So let me just tell you guys something very careful. We see this every single solitary day at work. So when you are determining the structure of your business, whether you want to be that LLC or that corporation or that partnership or that sole proprietorship, please understand that this is your decision.
Mm-hmm.
But you really need to think about your decision before you start registering for accounts. Once you're in the game, you're in the game. Okay. For instance, if you decide that you're going to be an LLC, and you might even find a link online to say, hey, I'm going to be an LLC. And if I pay this company so many dollars, they'll register my LLC for me for a fee. Okay. When you do that and you pay your fee, you are an LLC. You are set up. You do have a tax filing obligation. It's going to cost you $100 a year minimum of franchise and excise tax and filing the return. And one other thing along those lines too, when you do register for whatever tax account that you do have, please understand that we do have a filing expectation. So that when you do start your business, you have to end your business. You cannot just say, well, I'm not doing that anymore, and I'm just not going to do this, because you'll get letters from us. You'll get potential levies on bank accounts and things like that. I'm not trying to scare you at all. Please don't get me wrong. I'm trying to be passionate because of the fact that we see so many people that get into things and they are just not aware of what the ramifications are. So investigate and communicate with us and let us know what you're thinking about. And we'll advise you where we can. But like Katie says, we can't really give you that advice to tell you exactly what you should do because that is your decision. Okay. So hope it didn't sound too preachy, Katie. I just wanted to be
Not at
sure that
all. No, and I think
everybody understands how important it is, because
yes.
it's like the little drop of water that becomes the creek and the river and the lake, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All
And
right.
like you
Thanks.
mentioned, Billy, like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, if you started off, you thought, I need to be an LLC because my brother told me I should be an LLC to protect myself, but
Oh my
think you
goodness.
you think about that and you think maybe I don't need to be. You can change that. You're not locked into it forever, but you can't just change it without letting us know.
Right.
You
There's a
can't
very
just
precise procedure. And you mentioned
Mhm,
Secretary of State. They're involved as well.
mhm,
No, we're not the Secretary of State, but we work with them from a data standpoint, sharing data between the two agencies. And there's a very precise step that you have to
mhm.
take in order to get in and out of registration. So, but, and we'll help you. We will
Yeah,
definitely help you. Whatever you do, follow this one guideline. If somebody at the state sends you a piece of paper
read it.
and tells you something, please read it.
Mhm.
And you're probably laughing to yourself. Why would somebody not read their piece of paper? That's kind of what we thought too. But when we send things out, there's a reason, and there may be a problem, and it may be a problem that we can help you solve very easily. And if it's not, we'll tell you what to do anyway. Okay. So that's why we're here to help you guys out.
See, there's
All
all
right.
types of people in this world, right? Billy is your person that reads all of his mail. I'm your person that puts it in a stack and says, I'm gonna get to that tomorrow. And I really will, but then I don't. So
See,
I
don't be
understand.
like
Don't be
Katie.
like
See,
me. Don't. No.
Katie is not your best example. Okay.
I'm not, but I will preach all day long. If you see something with our state seal on it, read it, open it. I do open things with a seal on it. Sometimes you get tricked that way too. But no,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and
read all the
another
letters.
thing too, there are different companies like we were mentioning that offer these services to
Mhm,
register you or to do things for you, that you don't necessarily have to pay that company to do that. You can do it yourself and save
mhm.
some money. It's not illegal for them to solicit you for business for filing different things with governmental entities, but investigate and
Mhm.
find out for yourself and see if that's what you want to do. Okay.
That reminds me, I did just see a question pop up. I'm not keeping an eye on the chat 'cause I'm uh, looking at the slides, but I just saw something pop up a minute ago that said if I'm using an agent to register my business, do I use their address or my address? Good question. You use your address, and your a registered agent will not use their address because again, it goes back to where is your business located, whether it's your home or a storefront. That is the address that you need to use for your location. If you want to use the registered agents or a lawyer or an accountant or bookkeeper for your mailing address or something, that's up to you. But the location address must be where you are, where the business is located.
Yeah, tagging along with that, a PO box is not a location address.
Nope.
It's a mailing address. Okay, your business is not located in a 4x8 box at the post office. Trust me,
Hmm.
you can't do it. If you could, you'd be really small and it'd be kind of hard to do. So it's kind of the way to think about it. But yeah, we need where your books and records are. If you don't have an office, then where do you keep your books and records? And typically, this would be a home address. Okay,
Right.
we keep this in our computer system so that we can communicate with you properly and to know exactly how to send out paperwork and other stuff like that. So getting addresses right too. Oh, also one fun fact: we do not have a crystal ball at the Department of Revenue. We do not know if you move. Isn't that amazing? So let us know because when we send out letters, typically we'll send them out in bunches for different reasons. We will get hundreds and maybe even thousands
Thousands.
of letters back saying no forwarding address.
Hmm.
Well, that's because folks did not let us know where they moved. Okay. Or maybe that they just decided they would quit business and not tell anybody,
Hmm.
which, as we discussed earlier, is a no-no, right? So anyway,
And some people think, Billy, that because we're the state of Tennessee, that if you change it over with Tennessee's Secretary of State or with Department of Commerce and Insurance, that we actually don't operate under one big umbrella. Each state agency is independent,
mhm,
and you would have to change in any agency within the state, any different departments that you deal with. One to get your, maybe this type of, like cosmetology license or contractor's license, you'll go to Department of Commerce and Insurance for that. Your
right,
unemployment insurance, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But you have to reach out to each agency. If you reach out to the Secretary of State to change your address, we don't get that information, or your clerk's
right,
office.
yeah, or the IRS too.
Right.
Same idea.
Right.
We do share some data, but that's not on our level at the registration level. That's usually in our audit people that
Right.
look at different things and make sure records match up and stuff like that, which all
Right.
states do that, by the way, just in case you need to know. But at any rate, it's again, it's just about being smart, doing the right thing, communicate, engage yourself actively into what you're doing, and don't be afraid to ask a question
Hmm.
because Katie and I didn't wake up knowing all this stuff that we know because we're so smart. No, we're not. We're a little bit smart anyway. But at the same time, these are things we've learned and tips and tricks that could really help you guys out as you start your businesses out. And we desperately want you to be successful. We want you to be $1 million taxpayer. Wouldn't you like to send the government $1 million? We'll take it, by the way. But just imagine if your business was super big and you could do that. That would be tremendous. So we're here to help you guys. Thanks.
And the one thing that I'm really passionate about, my career with the Department of Revenue, I spent a short time over in our collections division, and it is heartbreaking to see a business fall into collections, especially just due to being confused. It's one of the reasons why I am so passionate about this topic, making sure you understand at least the basics so that you don't end up like Billy mentioned, getting a levy or lien. We do we do not want it to come to that, much less, just having to pay penalties and interest and stuff like that. So the more you know, the better. All right, so moving right along here, we talked about, do you need to register with the Secretary of State? So if you're an LLC, a corporation, um, limited partnership, the answer is yes. And that does, as Billy mentioned, go along with a franchise and excise tax requirement. Talk about that later. All right, do you need an employer identification number, an EIN? That's through, you obtain that through the IRS. It's a federal number, also known as an FEIN. It's a federal tax identification number, and it's used to identify a business entity when it comes to setting up your tax accounts with the state of Tennessee. If you're a sole proprietorship, you're going to set up your state tax account with a social security number, but that doesn't mean you still may not need an EIN. All right, and we'll break that down on this next slide, but in terms of how you set up your tax accounts. But if you have employees, you're going to need an EIN. There's other reasons you may need an EIN, but that is an area of confusion sometimes. Y'all hold on just a second. I think I feel a sneeze coming. Maybe it's because I mentioned it, it'll go away. I think it went away. Okay. All right, good. I got distracted now. Do you need an EIN? Yes. So you may need one if you're a sole proprietorship, but just remember when it comes to registering with the state of Tennessee tax accounts, if you're a sole proprietorship, you'll register with your social. A lot of confusion with that when registering, whether you're going to your clerk's office or straight to the Department of Revenue. Just remember, if you're a sole proprietorship, you will register for all your tax accounts and Tennessee business licenses with your social. All right, the start date of your business. This is more important than you would think. What you actually say when you're filling out your paperwork. Sometimes it's easy just to choose today's date or just go back and say January 1 or, I kind of got started last, whatever. You want to be very deliberate when you're choosing the start date of your business. The effective business start date is the date that tax obligation begins. All right, I want to repeat that. The effective business start date is the date that tax obligation begins. The reason I'm repeating that is because it's very common for you to go in and register for a tax account. For example, especially a sales tax account. Let's say you're going to be setting up a retail business where you're going to be buying things to sell. You'll want to set up that sales tax account so that you can get your resale certificate and buy those products that you're intending to resale without paying tax on them. We'll talk about that later. But you have to know that the date that you choose there, if you're wanting to start your business, let's say today's, what is it? I don't even know. Today is April something. Now I can't get back to that part on my phone. What is it? April 3rd,
April
4th?
3rd.
Thank you. And I'm wanting to start my little retail shop maybe around October. So I'm going to go ahead and get my sales tax account today so that I can start buying my stuff, right? To stock my shelves and to stock my store. So I'm going to go to the Tennessee Department of Revenue's website and I'm going to open up a sales tax account. If I use today's date as my start date, then I'm going to have to start paying sales or start filing a sales tax return starting next month, even though I'm not selling anything. So it'd be an easy return, zero, zero, zero. And that's if I file it on time, 00. But why would I want to do that? I don't even need to, I got enough stuff to worry about. I don't want to have to deal with going in and filing a zero return every month between now and October. So if I'm intending on opening my business in October, I need to put that as my business start date. Hopefully that makes sense to you. We'll repeat that again a little bit later. Another thing you're going to have to determine pretty early on. Yeah, something before I move on, Billy, you got something to add to that?
I've got to preach just a little bit more.
Preach on.
You guys are getting tired of me in a minute, but anyway, please, please, please make sure that you are going to open your business before you start down the myriad of registration among all these different tax types. Okay. We know of countless numbers of people that say, oh, I think I'm going to start a blanky blank business. And then they'll set up, you know, 3 or 4 different kinds of tax accounts with us and maybe something with the Secretary of State and set up all the stuff. And then they quote, never do anything with it. Okay. That we get it. Life happens. That's fine. We understand, right? But if it's just an idea that you have, that does not tell you at that moment to go and start registering for tax accounts. It's critical to go back to sort of what Katie was talking about before on those resources, where if you need to think about doing a business, you really got to have a business plan. You got to kind of figure out what you're doing before you do it, and then you do it. You don't do it before you've thought about it. Okay. And thinking about it is not just having an idea, it's actually planning out what you're doing, getting it on paper, figuring out who's going to do what and when you're going to do it. It's a very intricate process. Successful businesses have a plan. Okay. It's like if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Isn't that what the saying says? Something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I just can't emphasize don't get the cart before the horse. Get stuff set up. It's super
Mhm.
important. Okay. But do it in the right order is what I'm saying. Get everything planned out. Okay. Now preaching is over for a moment anyway.
Yeah,
Thank you.
come back and preach some more. We need
I
this.
will. Thanks.
We
Yeah,
need it.
absolutely.
I will say, if you have chartered with the Secretary of State, and I just saw a chat message pop up that that's what happened to somebody. They went through the Secretary of State, got registered, and didn't start till 3 years later. If you've chartered with the Secretary of State, that is the date that will be the effective date of your business. So be real cautious before that. If you've done that, it's, we cannot change that date. But let's say you did go ahead and get a sales tax account because you're wanting to start purchasing your product. That is a date that we can change. If you accidentally use today's date for that, but you're not opening till October, that's an example of reach out to us. We can make that change in our system, but we need you to reach out to us about that. I'm going to fly a little bit through these last few bullets here. What is your NAICS code, the fiscal tax year? NAICS is North American Industry Classification System code. That is something that you will be required to choose or to select what NAICS code you are when you do register with us. And there's a drop down where you type in the type of business that you are, and you'll have some options to choose from. It should be pretty clear for you, but that's something that you need to do. This came into play big time during COVID because there were certain industries that were given assistance, right? And that NAICS code is what we relied on in our system to know if you got relief, assistance from the government, was just based on that. So it's important. Determining your fiscal year. Most people have a December 31st fiscal year end, but not necessarily everybody. So just make sure that is something that is determined before you get going. And also determining your directors, officers, shareholders. That kind of goes without saying. And also there's an example of something that can change over time. And you reach out to us when that happens, and also if Secretary of State. So again, I'm just going to repeat what you see in this box. Try as hard as you can to determine these factors before registering for accounts and with the Secretary of State and getting your licenses. Determine it all and keep it consistent amongst all the different agencies. All right, so deciding structure and entity type. We've mentioned that we can't really legally advise you on how to do this, but what we can tell you is how you would set up your Tennessee tax accounts. So anyone who registers a business in Tennessee must ensure that they indicate their business structure, which is necessary to establish tax accounts. A sole proprietorship is one individual in business alone, and you're going to register your tax account under the Social Security number of that individual. A partnership is generally 2 or more persons are going to register with an FEIN. An LLC, you've got a single member limited liability company, which is one individual or entity. An SM LLC can register with the Social Security number of that individual or an FEIN. A multi-member LLC, one or more individuals or entities will be registering with an EIN. A professional limited liability company, a PLLC, those are your law firms, stuff like that. Company engaged in rendering of professional services registers with us using their FEIN. Corporations, chartered legal entity, FEIN with us, and nonprofits are granted a tax-exempt status by the IRS will register with us using an FEIN. Licenses, permits, and more. That makes it sound exciting, right? It's not really. It's a lot of stuff to take care of and do when you're getting started. Not fun, but you got to do it, right? So your business license, that is something that you're going to obtain from your county. All 95 counties in Tennessee require a business license. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a few minutes because there was a pretty big law change regarding which type of license you might need, whether it's a minimal or a standard, and in turn, your business tax requirement. We'll get into that in a few. But your business license, you're going to get from the county clerk. Most cities in Tennessee or municipalities, whether it's a city, town, Most municipalities require business license, but not all. We do have a link on our website that will show you which municipalities require that business license. I think it's around 300 or so municipalities in Tennessee. So you may need a city and a county license. Most businesses are going to need some type of license. There are some exceptions, and we'll talk about that later. To charter or register your business, you'll do that through the Tennessee Secretary of State, and that is, again, as I mentioned, for partnerships, corporations, LLCs, and business trusts. Your FEIN, we do not do that here within the state of Tennessee. You have to go directly to the IRS. It's a really simple thing to do on their website. That's going to be required well, for partnerships, corporations, LLCs, business trusts, and businesses that have employees, regardless of your structure. So again, I'm going to repeat this again. If you're a sole proprietorship, you'll register with us through your social security number, but you still may need that FEIN if you're going to have employees and therefore need employment insurance. Speaking of employment insurance, that is there's a tax there that's required, but that is the one local tax here in Tennessee that we don't run. That is done through the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. All businesses with employees or payroll are going to need that. Don't have a lot of information there for you. I'm not very knowledgeable at all on that topic. All I know is that that's something we don't handle is unemployment insurance tax. So there are some professions that are going to require a professional license, like contractors, cosmetologists, doctors, nurses. Those licenses, that is different than your business license. Kind of confusing there, but it is different. You may need a business license and a professional license. I'm going to refer you over to the Department of Commerce and Insurance. They've got a website that explains all this. Certain professions such as contractors, cosmetologists, insurance agents, etc., will need a professional license. A license to serve liquor by the drink, an alcohol license, that is through TABC, Tennessee Alcoholic Beverage Commission, and that is required for sales of alcoholic beverages for consumption on premises. And finally, last but not least, your tax accounts, where you go to us for that. And that is required for most businesses with very few exceptions. If you run a business in this state, or even if you're an out-of-state business with certain connections to this state or nexus in this state, then you're going to have to register for some tax accounts here. Lucky you. All right, so the next couple slides, we're going to share with you some resources. We've moved this around a little bit if you've ever attended one of these before. We're putting it here in the kind of getting set up properly section of this new business workshop because there are some great resources that we have in this state that help small businesses or any business get started. And we've looked into these resources and can really recommend them. The Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, or ECD, has this Smart Start guide and also a Smart Start portal that helps walk you through and visualize your business model and also connect you with some resources across the state. Some of those resources they're connecting you with are some of these ones we are mentioning here, but very highly recommend that Smart Start guide. There's a Tennessee Small Business Development Center. They're located throughout the state in a network of centers that provide counseling and training to help small business owners start, grow, and expand. Lots of free resources on their website, including a step-by-step business planning workbook. Couple more here, the SCORE Association, score.org. Volunteer business counselors, advisors, and mentors offer free. I thought that they were all free, but on their website it says or low cost counseling, but basically it's people who have been successful in business who can mentor you, advise you, counsel you with your business. And they have some great webinars and online workshops as well. And then, of course, there's the SBA, the Small Business Administration. They've got lots of great information on their website as well. So if you are a new business, haven't yet started, or have started but just wanting some help and some assistance with your business, these are some great resources for you. All right, so now we're going to move along. You've gotten some information about getting set up correctly, right? If you think you maybe are not set up correctly, reach out to us. I think I saw that somebody shared our number. We'll share that with you again later. But now we're going to talk taxes. We're going to dive into the basics of the major tax types here in a few minutes. But first, I'm going to take you on a quick tour of our website because I'm going to be mentioning a lot of different resources throughout these next few minutes or hour or so when we talk about the taxes. So I'm going to go over to the web so I can show you these resources available to you. Let's see here. Okay, so back to the top here, back to our website, tn.gov/revenue. You've probably been here already. When you registered for this event, you came to our website. So I think our website's pretty awesome, and I've studied perused lots of states' website. I'm not just biased. I really think we've got our organization or our information well organized on our website, and the resources really are fantastic. Even I've been with Revenue for 10 years, about 4 years with the tax division here, and in the past 4 years since I've been with Taxpayer Services, I have seen our resources just flourish, and they're so much better now than they've ever been. We internally use the resources that I'm going to be showing you here in a minute that are on our website. We have some kind of internal guidance for certain groups that we have and stuff, but for the most part, we use these resources, our tax manuals, all this stuff that I'm about to show you. That's what we use too. So that's great information. On our homepage here, the few places I'm going to point out to you, mainly at this point, just because I'm going to be referring to them throughout the next little bit. The first thing I'm going to show you are the tax pages. You can get to it by clicking here to the drop down of taxes, or you can go to the tile. I'm going to click on the taxes tile here. Taxes. All right, so here's all those bazillions of taxes we've got, right? Well, we're just going to be focusing on right here the most common taxes. We got business tax, franchise excise tax, and sales tax, the three big ones. Now, we are not going to spend a lot of time today talking about any of the alcohol taxes. We're not going to be talking about local administered taxes or a lot of these other ones. But obviously, if you're going to start up a bail bond business, you're going to need bail bond tax. If you're starting up any kind of business, I would at least say kind of peruse this section right here to see if anything other than these big three might be applicable to you. If you're starting up a body shop, a vehicle shop, you might need oil and tire fees, stuff like that. So if you're going to start a restaurant that serves alcohol, beer and tobacco taxes, that would be relevant to you. But we are going to just be focusing on these big three today. But just to show you how on our website they're that the tax page is laid out. So even though we're going to give you information today about the basics, I'm still going to refer you on to looking at this page for each of the major tax types just to read through it and get it into your brain one more time. So you're going to have a basic overview of the tax, and then there's going to be a menu. It looks a little different. Oops, it's going to look a little differently if you're on a mobile device, but you've got information on the due dates and tax rates, how to register, and of course with business tax, it's tied in with licensing. We'll discuss that. Business tax classifications, whether you're a retailer or a wholesaler, deductions, exemptions, credits, we all want to know about that, right? And then tax guidance and forms. Now, those are the two I'm going to actually click on here just to show you. When you click on tax guidance, and of course this is going to be an option for all of the tax types that you're going to click on under taxes. They're going to give you something similar to this. Some are a little bit different. But they're all going to have tax guidance. So when you click on tax guidance, you're going to see some options come up here. A manual, maybe a couple different manuals, any articles that we've got regarding this tax type, any important notices, rulings. I'm going to click on this since I just mentioned it, the county and city business tax dashboard. This is going to show you, I was telling you about every county has business license, which ties in with business tax, but not all cities, not all towns do, or also known as municipalities. If you hover over, it'll tell you, let's see if I scroll down a little bit. You can see here, this is Robertson County, and you can see on the third column there on the right, does each municipality in Robertson County have business tax and business license? You can see the ones that do, and of course the ones that don't here. Cross Plains does not, or Linda does not, but the other ones do in Robertson. You can do that for each county just to see if you're going to need to get a city license as well when it comes to business tax. I believe there is yep, you can download a printable version of it too. I've got to scroll over because I've got everything expanded here, but you can look at a PDF form of that as well. But the main thing I'm wanting to show you right now is this tax manual. You can get to it from another way, from another place, and I'll show you how to get to all of the tax manuals. But when you're within a certain tax type, like right now, I'm still within business tax, I'm going to click on this tax manual. Click on the current one. We've got prior versions available as well, but the current business tax manual. Now, this can seem a little bit overwhelming. You can see it's 171 pages. This is when I was telling you that we use these resources internally, our staff does. I probably open up this business tax manual, I don't know how many times a day. Depends on what I'm doing, but at least multiple times a day I'm in this manual just to double check myself. It's too much to memorize and too much to remember. All of it, even us here, except for if you're Billy, right? Billy knows it all. Just kidding. But this manual is incredible. You can go through, peruse the table of contents here, again, in all of your spare time as a busy new business owner, but I still want to recommend that you at least look through here and see what's available to you. I'm going to scroll kind of fast, hopefully won't make you dizzy here, but who is subject to tax, business tax, registration and licensing, how to determine your gross sales, different classifications. I'm not going to spend time on this. I'm just showing you, and you can actually click on directly over to the area in the manual by clicking on the table of contents. So tax manuals are great. I'm going to take you back over to the Department of Revenue's main homepage. So I've already shown you under taxes, under tax resources, and if you click on tax guidance here, this is where you can see all the tax manuals. There's some other things in this menu, the law book and revenue rules, some other things, important notices, lots of good stuff here, but I'm going to focus in on and click on tax manuals. And you can see here, these are all the different tax manuals we have. If you are going to be serving alcohol, read the alcohol tax manual. Business tax. If you're a farmer, nursery operator, or timber harvester, we've got a whole manual dedicated to that. So it's not just necessarily tax types. You can also learn, there's also industry specific guidance. Military members, just on down the road, other industry specific guidance here. There's a few here, taxation for nonprofits, short-term rental units, that one's new, and this is a new one too, Tennessee automobile dealerships. That's a new manual that just came out this past January. So great tax manuals that are very clear information. It's not just a repeat of what you're going to read in the law book. That's what our old manuals were, honestly, and it was kind of confusing. So this is real life examples and good explanations of all aspects of the different taxes that we have. So can't brag about our manuals enough. Two other places I'm going to take you to before we get started talking about the different taxes. One is Revenue Help. This is a bank of articles regarding all aspects of everything that we do here at Department of Revenue. Big one here, Tennessee Taxpayer Access Point, or TNTAP. We'll be talking about that later this morning, but tons of, I mean, you can see it's broken down into topics here. Some how-to videos, logging in, registration, different aspects regarding payments. Okay, so under taxes, you've got all the different taxes here. Tons of great information. If you want to just type in your search term here, you can. Also, from this page, at the bottom of the page, you'll see here you can submit a request. That is a way, if you don't find your answer in a manual, or you just get sick of looking for it, or you don't find it here in the articles, you can do submit a request. Fill out this quick little form, and it sends us a question that you have, and that way you get an answer in writing. It's the same way as if you were to send us an email. It goes to the funnels to the same group of experts within our division that help you answer these questions. So Revenue Help. All right, back to the home page. So if you registered for this workshop, you probably already went here, but I'm going to show it to you again because we talk about it a lot today, is taxpayer education. So you went here, New Business Workshops, to register for today, but I'm going to show you our tax webinars page. We have a monthly webinar. It's the last Tuesday of every month. We started these up a little bit before COVID, I believe, but really have been on the ball with doing them ever since 2020. You can see here, you can always register for the upcoming webinar, which this month is going to be potential Schedule G franchise tax refunds. You've got a list of upcoming webinars here. You can only register for the upcoming one at one time, so you can't register for these May, June, July, and on. But anyways, here's the cool part. Down at the bottom, we've got a webinar video library that has all 58 webinars that we have had, and they are very helpful. You can click on the actual video here, or you can click on the PDF to see the PDF of the slides that we go through. I'll be referencing these quite a bit because there's no way to have a basic of everything to tell you today without it being like a week-long seminar. So I'm going to be referring you to a lot of these webinars for you to be able to dive a little deeper. And everybody digests information in different ways, right? So whether you're the type that needs to read it, in which case maybe our tax manual might be better for you, or some of those help articles. If you want to listen to us discuss it and whatever the topic is, then maybe clicking on the video of the webinar might be more helpful for you. Okay, so those are the main places I wanted to show you on our website before we go any further. I'm going to keep on going for a little while, Billy and Dan, if y'all think that's okay, and we'll take a break here maybe after we go through business tax.
Yeah, that'd be just fine, Katie.
Okay.
I think maybe just to take a breath here and say we've got a lot of activity in chat, and this is great. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to respond back to you on some of these issues here. We're going to try to stay up with these questions as best we can. There's a lot of material that we're still going to cover, like business tax and business licensing, which is a hot topic these days. And somebody mentioned the $100,000 rule. That's coming up, so
Yes,
hang
it
tight.
is. Yep.
Yeah, it's our favorite thing to talk about these days. When I say favorite, I mean maybe not favorite. And I will say, Celeste, we're not going to talk about payroll taxes. That's an IRS thing. And let's see what else we can talk about while Katie takes a breath here. Let's see. Somebody says, what is the difference of the sales tax number and the Secretary of State ID? Well, there's a big difference. The Secretary of State ID is from the Secretary of State's office, and the sales tax number is a sales tax account number that you get when you apply for a sales tax account with us. And that's about it.
You'll have a separate tax account number for each of the tax accounts
Right.
that you register for us with. So if you have business tax and sales tax, those are two separate account numbers. So maybe good to keep those somewhere special. You'll have access to them on your TIN-TAP as well. And we'll talk about TIN-TAP later.
Yeah, and one thing, just real quick, some people have mentioned about their tax preparers do things for them and file returns for them, and that we can't tell you what your tax preparer does or doesn't do, because some of them do the federal taxes and maybe the state franchise and excise tax, but they may not do your business tax, or they may not do your sales tax, or your liquor by the drink tax, or your all the other taxes that Katie mentioned earlier. So it really depends. It's depends on what your preparer does. So guess who you have to ask? That would be your preparer, right? So yeah, it's all good.
I really
See,
recommend doing that. Back when I worked in collections, I can't tell you how many times I'd get someone on the phone and I'm like, hey, you're in collections. You haven't paid business tax in the last 3 years. And they'd say, I thought my accountant did that for me. And some of that's because people are confused. Those are two separate things. Franchise and excise and business tax are not the same thing. They are two different tax types. And your accountant may be doing one but not the other. Like Billy said, ask them, communicate with them, make sure that y'all are on the same page.
one final question I saw pop up from Kimberly here. Taxes on short-term rentals, cabins and other types of Airbnb sorts of things. out there typically are going to involve registering for a business license with your local city or county where the property is located. We're going to talk about this again in just a little bit here too. So business tax might be required if you're over $100,000. Unlikely to have sales tax unless you're selling some sort of weird thing like, I don't know, food or maybe firewood for the fireplace in your cabin and stuff. That's sort of odd. And then, of course, if you're an LLC or a corporation, et cetera, you would need franchise and excise tax. So, yeah.
And
And look,
occupation
Katie, what do you
tax.
have?
Yes, we did a webinar on this just in the, I think in the last year. I will say some of our webinars are going to contain information that's now slightly outdated because of this new big business tax threshold. But anyways, yeah, we have a whole webinar dedicated to short-term vacation rentals, a very popular business model in this state. So watch that if you're interested in that topic. That does remind me, there is another type of tax in Tennessee that we do not handle, and that is occupancy tax. You'll do that through your local jurisdiction, city
Katie,
and county.
one more question, just real quick, and I'm going to cut this off so you can continue.
Okay.
Steve asked about Nexus and what does systematic and continuous business activity mean. There's not a specific length of time. No, it's depending on your fact set. There's nothing written down in law as to what that is. I think what a lot of times people would look at is, do I sell to customers regularly in Tennessee? Do I generate income regularly in Tennessee, as opposed to just occasionally? It's not a bright line. There is a bright line test on Nexus, which we're not going to even talk about all that stuff today. That's crazy. That's a whole that's probably a whole webinar.
Well,
If you want to
now
talk
that you
about
mentioned
that.
that, there is next. I'm searching. We've got a Nexus webinar. So there it is.
Well, then there you go. That's for the
There you go.
out-of-state businesses. That's true too. Okay, I'm gonna be quiet now, Katie. Thanks.
But come back, Billy. Okay, so we're going to move along here and talk about business tax. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here actually because we just did a business tax basics webinar, and I'll point you over to it, provide a link here in a few minutes, but just to be able to spend more time answering your questions, and we're just going to touch on the basics of business tax here. All right, so this slide contains a chart that explains the relationship between business tax and business licensing. They are married, okay, in some instances. So the first column here are annual gross sales. And then we've got whether or not a license is required, whether or not business tax is required. And then the last column is how do you renew that license? All right, so let's look at this first column, gross sales, annual gross sales. Under $3,000 in annual gross sales, do you need a license? No. That's just considered kind of casual and isolated, or maybe a hobby business. If you're making under $3,000 annually, no business license is required. Therefore, no business tax is going to be required. So since there's no license, there's nothing to renew, right? Pretty simple there, under 3,000. This is the big change. What you see now that says between 3,000 and 100,000. This number right here, 100,000, a year ago today, that number was 10,000, between 3 and 10. Now it's between 3 and 100,000. You need a minimal business license from your county or city and no business tax requirement. There's never been a business tax requirement for someone holding a minimal business license. It's just the threshold that has changed. So this is very small business friendly. The Tennessee Works Tax Act that was signed into law in Tennessee last summer is what prompted this big change. So if you make gross under 100,000 in sales annually, you just need a minimal license. There is no business tax requirement anymore, and you'll renew that minimal license directly with your clerk. And I'm going to get to here in just a minute, briefly explain to you what you do if you're kind of in the middle of this. If you have a standard license from back before this new threshold, now you're going to be falling under that threshold. What do you do? We'll talk about that here in a second. All right, so the final row here over 100,000 in gross sales annually, you're going to need a standard business license. That is where that prompts you to have a business tax requirement. Filing and paying business tax is required. And in doing so, and filing and paying your annual business tax to us, that is what renews what allows the clerk to renew your license. We don't renew the license. We just let your clerk know that you did file and pay, and then they will issue your renewal. You don't um, have to go back into the clerk. They should mail it to you. You can contact them about that. Those minimal license, you do have to go to your clerk's office. Some of them offer it online. I think more and more will begin to offer the minimal license renewal online, since there's going to be a whole lot more minimal license uh, businesses out there now that that threshold has changed. We did a webinar back in September of 2023 that was business tax law changes. It was a whole webinar dedicated to this threshold change. So if you let me put it this way. If you have been in business for a little while, I know this is a new business workshop, but let's say you're just still a couple years into it, or maybe this time last year before the law passed, you went, and because the threshold was then 10,000 here, you got a standard business license because you anticipated making over 10. Well, now you're not going to, let's say you're not going to make over 100, so you don't need that standard license anymore. You're not going to be required to file business tax. You can't just not file. You'll have to reach out to us. If you're someone who at one point in time obtained a standard license, but now are not going to be hitting this $100,000 threshold, reach out to us. We have sent a letter out to most businesses who this would affect. So you may have gotten that and reached out to us already. That's great. Also, if you go to file business tax, if you went in there right now, let's say you are already an established business and went in to file, it will ask you, did you make over 100? And then you'll have the option at that point to file or not. Some people may want to go ahead and file. So, right, Billy?
Oh, yeah. So hang on a second. Sorry, I had to get my voice to work a little bit. Hang on a second again. Okay. So how to make
Good job.
things that are complicated more complicated, right? So a couple of questions in chat, but let me just discuss what Katie just mentioned. You do have the option to continue if you're already registered with us and you've been paying a business tax and but you're under the 100,000. I want to just keep things the way they are. I'm just going to go ahead and file on 10 tab. Okay, do it. That's fine for 23, for the year of 2023, which is what we're filing and paying now. You're allowed to do that. And this is, again, this is as we are recording this in April of 2024. If you're seeing this as a recording, things could change later. Don't know. But for right now, that's what they are. So what does that mean? That means you'll get a business license if you pay the tax, like you'd been doing in the past. Okay. But we would rather you change over to the minimal business license status because it more accurately reflects your true tax exemption. You know, the Tennessee Works Tax Act says you don't owe tax if your income is under the or 100,000 or under, right?
Mm.
So we would rather you change that over. How do you do that? You do contact us. You send us an email. You give us a phone call. You know, we'll share all this information with you again. You can even reach out to the clerk's offices who will end up reaching out to us so that we can adjust it. That's okay, no problem. But bottom line is, um, if you just have that license requirement in the future, you'll just renew with the clerk's offices for $15 annually, and go about your merry way. Some of you had mentioned, or one person at least had mentioned, well, what if I go over 100,000? You know, what do I do? Call us, send
Hmm.
us an email. Hey, I went over 100,000. Fix it. Okay, we will.
And we fix it.
Oh yeah, it's no problem to fix it. We do it all day long.
Hmm.
But you know, we sent out, oh my gosh, I can't even remember how many thousands of letters. Well over 100,000 letters to
Hmm.
taxpayers about this change. So guess what we're getting right now? A lot of emails, a lot of phone calls. Well, we'll be doing this for another couple of weeks at least about these changes. Change my thing. It'll be 6 o'clock in the evening on April 15th. Can you change this now? Maybe not, because we may not be at work at that point. So
Do
the
it now,
is,
in other words.
oh my gosh, yes, please, please help us help you
Right.
get this thing straightened out now. So,
Right.
and it's fine. We can do it. We do it all day long to hundreds of taxpayers a day right now. And so reach out to us on that too. One thing to point out here too, and you may have alluded to this, Katie, too, that business tax and sales tax are two different taxes. They have two different sets of rules, just like franchise and excise has its own set of laws and rules and regulations, same idea. But business tax does apply and business licensing to more businesses because it involves services that are typically not subject to sales tax. So we'll have more businesses that have to consider their business licensing and the possibility of business tax versus any of our other taxes that we have. Dan, you have something here too. I see your
Yes, my good friend
face.
Kelly asks, so to clarify, if you were a young business, so you were not making over 3,000 for a given year, there's no required registration with the county or the city, even if you started an LLC. What's the answer to that?
Well, we have
Ooh,
not started talking
trick
about
question.
F&E. Yes, that is
Trick
a good
question.
question. So
Nice. That's a
we're
nice
talking,
angle.
it is. So Kelly, we're talking about business tax right now. So if you make under 3,000, there is no license required, no business tax requirement, no nothing. But if you are an LLC, you're still required to pay the minimum F&E tax. We haven't gotten to F&E yet. We're going to get to that here in a few minutes. But if you are LLC, even if you have not yet registered with the Secretary of State, but you are calling yourself an LLC, then there's an F&E tax requirement. The minimum there is only $100. So if you've made no money, you're probably just going to owe that minimum, most likely, unless you own a bunch of stuff. But
Yeah, except for one thing too, Katie. It is $100. So
yes,
the
regardless, that's
question
the
we get
minimum.
all the time. I never did anything with my LLC.
Still $100
Congratulations, it's $100.
until
I mean, I
you
hate to be
dissolve.
flippant about it. I'm just telling you that's the deal. Okay.
We didn't make the
And
laws. We just
right.
administer them.
Goes all the way back to what we were saying earlier. You've got to understand what you're doing before you do it,
Hmm.
because there's the cause and effect. You register, tag, you're it, you know. And again, gosh, why do I keep preaching to people, Katie? Maybe I should just be quiet. I
No,
think I will be
well,
quiet
I
now.
need your assistance here. I love
All right,
your
I'm
input.
gonna be quiet at this point. So yeah, we'll come back to some of these other questions later. Celeste, we put a link in to the slides that are on our website earlier in the chat, and it's still out there.
It's
And
on the I'm gonna since I've seen a bunch of questions come out about that. Let me just take everybody real quick over to show you
yeah, thanks, Katie.
where.
I'll mute out now.
Okay, I'm going to take you over to our homepage again. Hopefully by the end of this webinar, if nothing else, you'll know how to navigate our webpage. I'm on tn.gov/revenue, and I'm going to go down to taxpayer education and outreach and click on new business workshops. And this is where you can download the slides right here. It'll open up a new window. There they are. And that's where you can click on the links to the hyperlinks that we have in here. There they are. Okay. Okay, so I think I'm done with this slide. Oh no, there's one more thing I want to mention about this, because this is an area where people get confused, because it is confusing. Obtaining your license at a clerk's office. If you obtain a standard license at a clerk's office, that is going to automatically register you for a business tax account. Okay. We share information back and forth, just like right here. I was telling y'all how once you file business tax, we let the clerk know. Well, likewise, they let us know when you have obtained a license. They also let us know when you've gotten a minimal license. You'll be in our system, but no filing requirement, right? Right here, no filing requirement for minimal license. But when you go to the clerk's office to get that standard license, it's immediate. Their system sends word to our systems talk, and we know that you have obtained a standard business license and now will have a business tax requirement. So what's going to happen there? You should be on the lookout for that all important piece of mail that Billy loves. It's going to have a state seal on it and everything. And it's going to say, hey, you've registered for a business tax account. And some people get confused by that letter because it says if you have not already been to your clerk's office, you need to go get a license. But a lot of people are confused with that because you've already been to the clerk's office, right? But maybe you haven't. Maybe you came straight to us. Maybe you have just listened. Maybe you're just now listening to this and you have gone on while we're talking and you've registered for business tax because you know you're going to make over 100. If that's the case and you have not yet been to your clerk's office, you still need to go to the clerk to purchase your first initial license. So I'm going to repeat that. If you start by going and getting a standard license at the clerk's office, they will let us know, and you have then thus created a business tax account, and the filing requirement, as Billy likes to say, that faucet has been turned on. We'll talk about how to add that account on TinTap and do everything with it later. If you come to us first and just open up your business tax account, open up a business tax account, but you have not yet been to your city or town or county to get the license, then you will need to go do that as well. So, okay, I'm going to move along here.
One thing real quick, Katie.
Yeah.
All right. So, and Katie, I'm not sure if you mentioned this or not, so I apologize. But if you do file a return with us and you realize that you probably didn't have to, okay? Did we talk about this?
Not about what happens if you do file
Okay.
it and didn't have to.
So this is where I want to be sort of real with you on situation. So as we talked about, you can file and pay for 23, right, on your business tax. And you can do that on TinTap. So if you do that and you're like, oh, I already paid the minimum, I paid like $22, like it says, and I really didn't have to do that, what do I do? Well, choice. Here's your choice right here. Number one, leave it alone. Let it process. Let the county clerk and the city clerk send your license, your standard license to you. You haven't heard anything. You're fine. Okay. But you sort of overpaid just a little bit because you really would have only paid $15 versus maybe the minimum of $22. So just think of it as a $7 difference. Okay. So can you amend your return and then go get a minimal activity license? Yes, you can. You can do that. You contact us, we'll tell you how to do it. Okay. If you choose to do that, you can then either take that credit and apply it to a future tax, or you can ask for it to be refunded. The refunds take probably right now, I'd say somewhere around 6 weeks to process. That time varies based on their volume. It's a busy time of year, so it is sort of hard. So your choice there is $7 versus leaving it alone and letting it ride out. It is your choice. We're here to help you make whatever choice you want to make, and we'll work with you on it. Okay. It's your money, and we're glad to help you. But I just want you to understand it's a little bit convoluted and a little difficult to change stuff that you've already done. However, we're willing to help you. Okay. That's all I wanted to let you know. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy. And again, but I'm glad I kind of came back to this slide. It's just to remind you all that we do have a webinar. If you're a business that had a license already and now you think you're affected by this change, check out this webinar. It's just about 50 minutes long. It might help you get some more clarity, or just call us and we'll walk you through it. All right, who is subject to business tax? In-state businesses with gross sales over 100,000, as we just discussed, in any county and within any municipalities that enact business tax. There are some exceptions. We'll talk about those. All right, so out-of-state businesses with substantial nexus who are engaged in activities that are subject to business tax and with gross receipts within a county that are over $100,000 are going to owe business tax in Tennessee. We do have a special webinar dedicated just to out-of-state businesses and Nexus. I do not, that was before the threshold change, that Nexus webinar. So all of the webinars that we have are the information is good as of the date that they were recorded. We have re-recorded some due to this big business tax law change. For example, the next one, special rules for contractors, we did re-record that one. But I'll go ahead and get to that. So if you're a contractor, which not a contractor with business tax law, it's defined as making changes or improvements to real property, stuff like that. Not like a contractor that's if you're hired to do computer software contract work or something like that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about builders, right? Repair people, those types of contractors. There are special rules for them. We're not going to get into that today. So if you are a contractor, and you are on this webinar, definitely watch this business tax for contractors webinar because the rules are special for y'all. Who is not subject to business tax? So casual and isolated sales. If I sell my car and I make $20,000 from it, do I need to go get a minimal license? No. I know that somebody, Billy or Dan jumped in here and said somebody was asking about what would define systematic business activity. Basically, making for business tax, if you make it over $100,000, you got enough business activity. The question's going to lie between that 3,000, 100,000. But if you just have a yard sale and you make over 3,000, it's just one yard sale, I think you're fine. If you start having a yard sale every other week, we're going to, if you're not filing business tax, somebody might reach out to you. You might get audited. All right. Who else is not subject to business tax? Gross receipts under 100,000. We've talked about that a little bit here. Still going to be subject to a local minimal activity license unless you're an exempt entity or selling something exempt. Some services are exempt from business tax. All right, we've mentioned that. I think Billy did. There are some services, or maybe I saw it in the chat, maybe an accounting service, veterinary, engineering. There's a list of these. There's, I think, maybe about 15 or 20 services that are exempt from business tax. You can see our business tax manual for that whole list, chapter 8.
Notice it says business tax. It does not say franchise and
Right.
excise tax. It does not say sales tax.
We're talking about
Okay.
business tax here.
Right. So apples and oranges.
Mhm.
And just want to let you know. Thanks.
That, and I'm glad I'm glad you said that. My brain, even though I work in this all day every day, my brain will get twisted around wait, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about franchise excise? Are we talking about business tax? Are we talking about sales tax? So just keep that in mind as we're going through this, because the rules do change a little bit based on tax type. So one thing I will say about the services that are exempt from business tax, notice the word services there. Let's say you've got a veterinary clinic that obviously has veterinary services there. You take your pet there, but they also sell items of tangible personal property, such as leashes or pet food, pet toys, that kind of stuff. Those items are going to be subject. Now you're still looking at the amount. If they had over 100,000 in gross sales of those products, they're going to need to file business tax for those, or between 3,000 and 100,000. If they fell there, they would need a minimal license for the sale of those things. But the services are what are exempt from tax and licensing. Those kind of go hand in hand, business tax and business licensing. So say you've got a veterinary clinic that doesn't sell anything else. You just take your vet there, which actually I live in a really small little town, and the vet that I go to now here that I live here does not sell the other stuff. You just get your pet seen there. So they would not need a business license from my town. They don't owe business tax. And again, our business tax manual, chapter 8, is going to go over all of these exemptions and exclusions that I'm talking about here, because it's worth looking at if you're a business that provides a service, just to see if that service is exempt. Some entities are excluded from business tax. Just got two examples here, but there's another list in the business tax manual that you can see. Manufacturers, for example, are excluded from business tax. Radio stations, there are more. I would look those up. It's a rare thing. When I said earlier, a couple slides ago, that most businesses are going to be subject to either needing to get that minimal license or a standard license. Most businesses. Some sales are exempt from business tax. Real property, so when you sell your home, wholesaler to wholesaler sales, and there's more. So Do your due diligence. I would see Business Tax Manual Chapter 8 just to briefly, it's not not heavy reading, but I would just look to see there just to make sure that your whatever it is that you do is subject to business tax. All right. This slide is it's a lot of stuff crammed into one slide here, but we're just going to touch on the basics of this, and then I'm going to refer you over to this webinar we did just a couple months ago called Business Tax Basics. So these are the basics of business tax, though. It's gross sales, which are all sales derived from products or services. Now, gross sales does not mean, I've heard people say, well, I didn't make any money. Well, maybe that's because your rent was high and you paid salaries and you paid for this and that. We're talking gross sales. It's without deduction, all sales that sometimes known as gross receipts. You can look at all the receipts of everything you sold. If that's the amount that you're going by. It's gross sales. So you're going to multiply that by both the classification rate and whether or not you're a retailer or wholesaler. The classification is what is determined when you first register. So at the clerk's office, and the classification, the rates are it's a very, very small rate, 0.000 something on a lot. So it's a very small rate. But that's determined when you first register. And then whether or not you're a retailer or a wholesaler, you'll decide that when you file. And that's basically where 50% or more of your sales made at wholesale or were 50% or more at retail. You choose whether you're a retailer or wholesaler. Those two things combined, your classification and whether you're a retailer or wholesaler, what's going to determine your rate. So gross sales times the rate. There are a few deductions and credits. Deductions are going to reduce your tax liability. Credits are going to offset that liability. There are a few, such as sales in interstate commerce. So that's sales where the buyer takes possession of the product outside of the state. Not just somebody coming into the state and buying it from you and then leaving with it, but when they take possession outside of the state. That's a common one. There's a handful of them. I would suggest going to our manual, or again, just watching this Business Tax Basics webinar for more information on that. So you got gross sales times whatever rate you are minus some deductions and credits, and then you've got what your taxes due. It is due on the 15th day of the 4th month following your fiscal year end. So for business tax, for most businesses most businesses have a December 31st fiscal year end. Okay, so the 15th day of the 4th month falls on April 15th, which is the tax day we all have in our head. So that one's pretty simple. I will say that is going to look a little bit different than the date you see as the expiration date on your business license. The expiration date on your business license is going to be 30 days after that. So if you're a December 31st fiscal year end business tax is due on April 15th and your business license expires on May 15th in that example. The business tax return, y'all, is pretty simple. It gets a little bit more complicated for contractors because there's just special deductions for contractors. You can deduct out what you paid to subcontractors. Again, a whole nother beast. Contractors, watch that webinar. But for the most part, the business tax return is pretty simple. I know people, I have friends that are in business that do their own business tax returns because it's a pretty simple one. We do have a webinar that is dedicated to the topic of filing the business tax return. And there's also a help video in the revenue help section that walks you through filing the business tax return. All right, we are about halfway through here, and I think now would be a good time to take a little break before we come back and dive into sales tax. And that way we can clear our brains. Since we're changing tax types, we'll clear our brains. How about that? We'll take a quick break. If y'all are good with 5 minutes, I'm on East Coast, so it's 10:54 right now. Let's just say we'll come back at 11 Eastern, 10 Central. Okay, I'll put that in the chat, and we'll see y'all in a few minutes. All right, everyone, we are back, and aren't you excited? We're going to tackle sales tax now. I see a message here from Chris. So in theory, after paying rent, utilities, I sold 150,000, but my expenses were 160, so I lost 10. So your net was minus 10, and that's unfortunate. But your gross sales were 150, which means yes, you are liable for business tax. Again, we didn't make the laws; we just administer them. So, in Tennessee tax law, business tax is based on your gross receipts. And I am going to take you over real quick here to just show you, and take another opportunity to show you the business tax page. I'm going to go over to taxes. Actually, I'll go it this way this time. Click it here. Business tax, rates, due dates and rates. Just so you see the rates here, it's different for whether you're a retailer or wholesaler, but the classifications, I'll click on that in a minute, but you can see here, you've got very low rates for retailer, 0.001, 0.0005, 001, 50018, very low rates. The classifications, again, for more information on this, that Business Tax Basics webinar has better information, but you can click on the classifications drop down on this main tax page for business tax and see Class 1A, these are your grocery stores. 1B, builders, materials, this may be your Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace, on down the road here. Class 2, you can see it's pretty specific. Our law pretty specifically puts things in classifications. This is where restaurants and motor vehicles are, some high dollar items there. Prescription drugs, hopping around a little bit, but just to show you, they're all pretty similar. Class 3 is all the some other specifically defined stuff, but also services that are subject to business tax. It's always interesting to me how they are very precise, like baby carriages are specifically listed. If there's anything you sell that is not specifically listed somewhere else, if you're selling something and you, and also let me just say this, classification is based on dominant sales. So if you sell a bunch of different things, but it's predominantly one particular thing, if you don't see your item that you predominantly sell listed anywhere, class 2 is like the catch-all where everything's you'll be a class 2 if you don't see it listed somewhere else. But yeah, so to your question, yes, it is based on gross sales, and those rates are pretty low. Again, unfortunate there if you end up losing money and still have to pay tax, but it's the nature of the beast, I guess, right? Okay, so we're going to move along now to sales tax. And here we go. Okay, so just so you know, sales tax is where about 65% or so of the revenue in Tennessee comes from. And we've got a very fiscally stable state. We're number 3 in the country for fiscal stability. And with almost all of our revenue in this state coming from sales tax, it's a really important tax. As someone who lives in this state, whether you're operating a business or not, whether you live here or you're visiting here, you're going to pay it for just about everything you buy. The businesses are responsible. The businesses in this state are responsible for collecting it and then remitting it on a return to us. So that's a really big responsibility on our business owners, and one that, again, the state is very grateful for, because you think about over 65% of our revenue coming in from that. It's very important. So it's going to apply to dealers that are engaged in the business of making sales of tangible personal property or of taxable products or services in Tennessee. As I just mentioned, the retailers are responsible for the tax and are to collect it from the consumers. Now, if you don't collect it from your consumers, you're still responsible for it. There's a little clothing boutique here in my neighborhood that every once in a while they'll say, we're tax-free today. Well, there are some tax-free days that are set apart in our law, as you all know. It's right around when school starts, you know, school supplies and clothing, that kind of stuff, tax-free. But we're talking just random times. This little boutique will say, no sales tax on everything you buy today. Well, they're still having to pay the sales tax on it, whether they collect it or not, for just those random days like that. But okay, I digress. We're going to walk through this little chart here. This is, again, a pretty hefty slide. It's a way to put the basics of sales tax all in one place. So let's spend a few minutes on this. So what is subject to sales tax? Sales of TPP, which is tangible personal property. Just think of, can you touch it, see it, smell it? Sales of TPP excuse me. Okay, sorry, I had to cough in your ear and then I muted it. Sales of TPP are generally taxable unless specifically exempt by law. Sales of services are typically not taxable unless the law says that they are. So that's kind of the big distinction there. Again, sales of TPP, sales of things is the way I like to think of it. Sales of things are pretty much taxable unless specifically exempt. We'll talk about that. Sales of services are typically not taxable unless the law specifically says that those services are. All right, let's look about sales of TPP. Let's look at sales that are exempt. So sales are exempt if the purchase is made by an exempt entity, such as a reseller, someone who's going to purchase it to resell it later. I saw a question an hour ago or so. Somebody said, so if I pay tax when I buy something, do I also need to charge tax? Actually, yes. I don't know if Dan or Billy answered that, but whether if you're a reseller, even if you ended up paying tax on something because you didn't have your resale certificate, or you maybe the retailer doesn't accept resale certificates or something, you still have to charge sales tax when you sell it. So, but resellers are exempt. Their purchases may be exempted. Nonprofits can buy things for the nonprofit that are exempt. So certain purchases are exempt. Certain products are exempt, like certain healthcare products. Textbooks are exempt. There's some others, not very many, but some. And then sometimes the usage is exempt, like if it's used for manufacturing, for agricultural purposes. There are exemptions, and we'll talk for a minute here in a little bit more about those exemptions. So maybe you qualify for an exemption. Maybe you're somebody who qualifies for an exemption, or maybe you're a business that's going to be having people come to your business saying, I'm exempt. You need to know whether or not they really are. We'll discuss that. So let's talk about services for a minute here. As I mentioned, generally, they're not taxable unless the law specifically says that they are, or unless it's part of the sales price of a tangible personal property. So this is a lot of words here, but taxable services include repair, installation, or cleaning of TPP, and that includes computer software, lodging services in rooms, short-term space rental for making sales, and parking or storage of vehicles. We have a whole webinar dedicated to services that are subject to sales tax if you have questions about that. All right, so what is the sales tax rate? So there's a state rate and a local rate, and that is going to equal the total sales tax due. We're going to talk about rates in a minute, but there are some special rates like food, digital products, what's called single articles, so like kind of one big high dollar item. It has a special way that rate is calculated. Most, in this day and age, I would venture to say, not all, but most businesses are going to have point of sale systems where all of this stuff is preloaded into it. Again, not all, but most have that. Sales tax nexus. So how to know if you are going to have to collect and then remit sales tax. So the first question we're going to ask here is, does the business have a physical presence in Tennessee? If yes, and if in-state tangible personal property sales reach a threshold of 4,800 plus or more annually, then you do need to register for sales tax, collect it and remit it. In-state services, and these are services subject to sales tax. So going back, these services right here, if you have $1,200 or more in annual services subject to sales tax, then you have to register for sales tax, collect it, and remit it. If either of those thresholds are not met, then no sales tax registration required. So there's your threshold, 4,800 for things, or TPP, 1200 for services. All right, so the next, the business does not have a physical presence. So we're looking at an out-of-state business. If the economic nexus sales threshold of $100,000 in a 12-month period is met, then that out-of-state business must collect and remit sales tax. Also, if substantial nexus is met, likewise, they would need to collect and remit sales tax. And substantial nexus can be taxable services in Tennessee, having employees in Tennessee. There's some lots of more information about that actually in our webinar that is specifically about reporting out-of-state sales by delivery destination, and that Nexus webinar that I talked to you about in the business tax section. That webinar that's specifically about Nexus talks about all the different tax types. So if economic or substantial nexus is not met, then there is no sales tax requirement for that business to have to collect and remit sales tax. Okay. The rates. All right. So the general sales tax rate, the state rate is 7%, and that is for the TPP, taxable services, all that, 7%. There is a state sales tax rate on food and food ingredients that is 4%. There is a notice, you can see a link there to a notice that the specific notice is about the sales tax holiday for food and food ingredients, but that notice actually is really good about explaining what the law defines as food and food ingredients. It's not prepared food, so not restaurant food or even within your grocery store food that's prepared like in the deli section or whatever. It's for food and food ingredients, that's 4%. So 7% state rate on most TPP and services, 4% on food, and then that's added to a local rate. So any county or incorporated city, municipality can levy a local sales and use tax. The local tax rate is going to be 2.75% or less, and you can link over, you see the link here, to all the local rates. Specified digital products, there is a carve out in our law for these products that are very specifically defined in our law as digital products. They have a state rate of 7% and just a standard local rate of 2.5 instead of the varying local rates throughout the state. These specified digital products. We have a webinar dedicated to that product in particular. If you think that might apply to you, check out our manual about that topic, the sales tax manual about that topic, or this webinar. Now, single articles are kind of confusing to explain in one bullet point here and even like 1 minute. So I'm going to refer you to the webinar on single articles, but basically over $1,600 in price, and that is a single unit. So I like to think of it as a car, a ring, a fur coat, or whatever, a purse. This day and age, you can find pair of tennis shoes that's $1,600. That's ridiculous. But anyways, they're taxed differently, and the best way for me to explain it to you is to tell you to go to the webinar about single article taxes. Again, if you have a point of sale system in your business and you think this might apply to you, the point of sale system should be set up to account for these single articles if you're a business where the products you sell or might sell include that. Got an interesting question. Billy, remember recently we got that question about what about a barrel of whiskey? Thought, well, that's interesting. That'd be an expensive barrel of whiskey. Okay, a little bit more about exemptions here. Usage-based examples include pollution control. Of course, this is going to have to be supported by a valid exemption certificate. Product-based exemptions, like I mentioned earlier, textbooks, school meals, some healthcare items. If you sell these items, your point of sale system should be set up to not charge sales tax on product-based exempt items. Entity-based. Now, this is where I really want to talk to you for a minute about if you're selling items and someone comes to you and says, I don't have to pay you sales tax on these items because I have an exemption. I'm government, I'm a nonprofit, I'm a qualified farmer, I'm a manufacturer. Well, they have to provide you something. If they say they're government, U.S. government, state of Tennessee, Tennessee counties and municipalities, they should provide you with an exemption form. The government exemption form is kind of a fill out one, but if you have a question about an exemption form that someone's providing to you, you can contact us. We also have a place on our website where you can verify an exemption. If they say they're a nonprofit, they are either going to have a Tennessee exemption certificate or a federally issued 501c3 document. Qualified farmers, again, they're going to have an exemption certificate, and manufacturers are going to have an exemption certificate. If you are making sales of these products and someone gives you an exemption certificate, I would like to first say, just look and make sure that the date on it, that exemption is within date. If there is a date on there, if there is an expiration date on it, make sure that it's in date. I'm going to take you over and do another little detour and take you over to a place where you can check for to see if an exemption is legit. And I think I mentioned resale here in a minute, but we'll still go on this little field trip over to the website. Got too many tabs open now. Okay, so I'm back on tn.gov/revenue. I'm going to go over to TNTAP. We'll spend some time there later, but that's the online portal. And I think it's here. Yeah. So let me just go back. So I'm on TNTAP's main page and I clicked information and inquiries, view options, and this is where you can do a sales and use tax certificate lookup. This is to look up resale certificates, or you can see all the different certificates you can look for here. I won't go through that whole list, but if they've got it, if they're showing you a certificate, you choose which one, type in the number and submit that, and just verify that that is a legitimate certificate. So that might be helpful to you. It's some pressure on you as a business to keep up with that. It's important that you do save and maintain copies of any exemption certificates that are given to you, because if you ever get audited, you will need to provide those. All right. And again, more about exemptions in the sales tax manual. It's in chapter 18 of the sales tax manual. Resale certificates. So once registering for a sales tax account, you will receive a certificate of resale. You can zoom in on your screen here just to kind of see what it looks like if you click the little plus sign at the top of the screen. But this shows you what it looks like, what you're going to get, which you can use to purchase products for resale. You as a business cannot purchase products tax-free that you're going to use. Let's say you're wanting to go buy some cleaning supplies to clean your shop. You have to pay tax on those. If you're purchasing products to resell, then you can use that. That's why it's called certificate of resale. We do have a webinar dedicated to this topic. You can see a link to that there. One thing that if you're going to, let's say, Costco or Sam's Club, and some of the stuff you're buying, you're going to be reselling, but some of it you're going to be using, you really need to separate that out into separate transactions just to keep it clean and for audit purposes. I'm sorry. But just going through the bullets here, these are issued by location, and each location is going to need its own certificate. So if you are a business that does have multiple locations, it's very important that you use the resale certificate for the location where those items are going to be resold. They do not expire. You're not going to see an expiration date on these like you will on, let's say, an agricultural exemption, but they are only valid as long as the location is open. As soon as you close that location, that resale certificate is no longer valid. For you as the seller, if you're wanting to verify each one of these, you'll probably have some repeat customers, but just if you want to verify it, go to that website that I just showed you and check and make sure that it's valid. We have people contact us every once in a while and show us the craziest looking things that people have tried to give them to not have to pay tax. But and again, like I said, the items that you purchase using that certificate of resale can only be used for items that are intended for resale. All right, registering for sales tax. So We were talking about business tax earlier, registering for business tax. You can register on TINTAP or register for business tax by getting your license. Sales tax, you're on your own. You have to register for sales tax. You can do so on TINTAP. You just go to TINTAP and then click on registrations and exemptions and click register a new business. You will be liable, we mentioned this early on, you'll be liable for filing a sales tax return beginning from the date that you start the sales tax account. So when you're getting a sales tax account, you may want to take that into consideration. Even if no sales are made and you have you're within date of when your sales tax account was opened, you'll have to file zeros every month. Sales tax return is due monthly. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Here's the filing deadline. So typically it is due, the sales tax return is due on the 20th day of the month following a period. Once an account is open, filing must begin even if no sales are made, so just filing zero. There is no option for filing an extension. Should have mentioned that with business tax, same. No option for an extension except for in very extreme circumstances like the business caught on fire or there was a natural disaster that affected things, but typically no filing exemption. Sales tax accounts are generally set up monthly, but if you do want information on whether or not you qualify to file annually or quarterly, that's going to be based on a history of what your sales are like. Then there's more information about that on our website. But again, they're typically just set up monthly. We do have a webinar dedicated to completing the sales tax return. There's also a help video about filing the sales tax return, and there's information in our manual about filing. It's maybe a tad bit more complicated than the business tax return, but really if you've got good point of sale software, it is pretty easy. A lot of small businesses can do this on their own. How to file, we'll talk later about how to make sure you're all set up in TINTAP, but you'll see once you have your access to your sales tax account in TINTAP, you will just click on view and file returns. That's also how you can amend a return. Also within TINTAP, you'll see your current period listed right here, and you can just click on File Now. You can choose to submit a file via software vendor or input return data yourself. That's going to be one of the first questions it asks you is, will you be submitting via a vendor? There's more information about vendor software on our website. You go to tn.gov/revenue and then e-filing information and then click on electronic filing using a software vendor. I think that's pretty common. All right. Do we need to talk about any sales tax stuff, Billy and Dan, that's been popping in the chat? I know we breezed through it pretty quickly, so.
I think we've done a pretty good job of going through a lot of these. I think there may be a couple that we did not. We can follow up.
Okay.
Yeah, one thing Jennifer pointed out here, if you purchase items tax-free intended for resale and end up using them for your own purposes, you pay taxes when you file your sales and use tax. Yes, that's a use tax. That's exactly right. That's exactly how you do that. Jackie wants to know, can you show again where to check a sales tax exemption form? You want to show them where the certificate lookup is?
Sure. So on our website, go to the top here, tn.gov/revenue. I'm going to go to TINTAP. Oh, I was already there. Okay. TINTAP. This is the TINTAP homepage. Scroll down to information and inquiries. Click on view options. And then you see sales and use tax certificate lookup right here. And you choose which type it is and then the number that's on the exemption certificate that you're looking at, and then click submit.
There you go.
Okay. Close out of everything.
If we've missed somebody, we can come back to them. So yeah, we'll go ahead and continue with the other taxes. Thanks.
Okay, sure. All right. So we're going to touch briefly on franchise and excise. And franchise and excise tax, it's the combination of two different taxes, a franchise tax and an excise tax. Franchise tax is the greater of net worth or book value of real or tangible property owned or used in Tennessee. And then excise tax is net earnings. A bird just flew into my window. That was a little disturbing. Excise tax is net earnings or income for the tax year, and those two combined are franchise and excise tax. We do have a webinar that is dedicated to talking about F&E basics, and then there's also an F&E manual. This is the tax that is common, but that's a lot more complicated than the other two. All right. I would say the F&E Basics webinar would be a good place to start. We also have lots of smaller webinars dedicated to certain aspects of F&E tax that may be applicable to you. I'm going to show you how to search our webinars for anything about a certain tax. Go over to our website. I'm going to show you all the F&E webinars that we have. So I'm on tn.gov/revenue. For the 100th time today. Hopefully you're really getting to know it. I'll click on taxpayer education, tax webinars. I'm going to go to the library, the webinar library down here, and you see how you can sort by category or tax type. I'm just going to sort by that, and you'll see here. Look at. Well, let me show more entries. Let me show everything. Kind of condensed it. All right, so starting right here, affordable housing, franchise and excise tax, asset-backed securitization, consolidated net worth election applications, diversified investments, facilities owned by the armed forces, farming, personal residence, fonts. So obligated member entities, that's a common question about that. So you can see here, we've got a lot of kind of niche franchise and excise topics within our webinar library. This is the basics webinar that I was telling you about that just touches on the basics, and that's it right there. So just wanted to show you that because we're definitely not going to have the time today to go into all those details, but the F&E Basics webinar you might find helpful. So looking at this timeline here, again, lots of information crammed into one place. F&E is due on the 15th day of the 4th month, just like business tax, but this is one where there is the option to have an extension. It's a 7-month extension. You either file and pay the return or file and pay for an extension, or you file and pay that $100 minimum that we've mentioned a few times. 15th day of the 4th month. Of course, if your fiscal year is different, this timeline's assuming a 12/31 fiscal year, but if you've got a fiscal year that's different than this, just follow the rule if it's the 15th day of the 4th month. That 7-month extension puts you at the extension deadline being November 15th. And then certain people, we'll discuss this in a minute, are obligated to file estimated payments throughout the year. They're not quite perfectly quarterly, but there's 4 of them, 4 estimated payments due throughout the year. And again, this timeline is based on a 12/31 fiscal year end. Your first estimated payment due on April 15th, then on June 15th, then September 15th, and then again on January 15th of the next year. So who is liable for franchise and excise tax? All for-profit, foreign, and domestic entities chartered, qualified, or registered in Tennessee or doing business in Tennessee must file the F&E tax return and at least pay the minimum tax. So if you register through the Secretary of State, and for those of you who have used a registered agent to set up your business, it's likely that they have registered you with the Secretary of State. I would verify that, but it's very likely that you are registered with the Secretary of State if you used one of those LegalZoom, one of those internet registration companies for your business. All right. So filing that extension, so to receive a 7-month extension, you must have paid on or before the original due date an amount equal to or greater than either 90% of the current period's liability. And you might say, well, I'm filing an extension. I don't know what my liability is going to be. Well, then just get as close as you can because it needs to be 90% of the current period's liability. Or 100% of the previous period's liability, or $100 if a previous period does not exist. Once you do that, the extension is automatic. more information about that in our manual. F&E extensions are very, very common. All right, that minimum filing. Minimum filing is very easy. On TINTAP, where I've taken you a couple times now just to show you where the resale, checking on a resale certificate was, you click on returns and then view return links and then click on file the minimum $100 F&E tax. It is very easy to do. It's going to ask you for a few pieces of information, some account information, a couple questions about the business, and then you pay it and you're done. So we're inching up right now on April 15th. If you think you may have set up through the Secretary of State or have an F&E account, at least go in there and do the 100 is what I would recommend. And that will at least verify that you have an extension. And if you need to get with a CPA or if you understand it all and can read the manual and file your own F&E return, we're inching towards doing something, making some kind of action. Again, if you're December 31 fiscal year end, then something's going to be required of you pretty soon. And filing that minimum is very easy to do. Filing the regular long F&E return, not so easy, but filing the minimum is easy. Estimated payments, we talked about that just a minute ago with the timeline. So who's going to be required for making an estimated payment when there is a combined F&E tax liability of $5,000 or more after credits for both the prior year and the current year? Then you're going to be liable for making 4 payments throughout the year. And again, I've got that kind of detailed out for you here right now when your first payment, second payment, third and fourth payments are due. And that again is if you have a combined liability of $5,000 or more for both the prior and the current year. $5,000 each year, you need to see some estimated payments from you, or there's going to be some penalty and interest that accrue, and that's not fun. Like I said, that is a very, very, very brief overview of F&E. If you want more information about it, go to our manual, the F&E Basics webinar, or one of those other F&E webinars that that I showed you just a minute ago. So we have lots of different tax accounts. If you want to, I showed you where to look for the other tax accounts. If you think that you might be liable for some of the other tax accounts, just I want you to do some research on them. We either have a manual for them or a tax page. So just some general tax account information here about delinquencies. This is not fun to talk about, but unfortunately it happens. Penalties and interest apply to any deficient or delinquent. So deficient if you didn't pay enough, or if you're late, there are penalties and interest that accrue. A penalty of 5% of the unpaid amount is added for each month up to a maximum of 25%. So penalty can be no more than 25%. Interest is computed at the current rate of interest. So now this is the really not fun part. Collections. We've got a whole division here at Department of Revenue that is dedicated to collections. Here's what's going to happen. We detailed this in a webinar we had about a year ago about tax compliance in the collections process. But if we do not see a return or payment from you within about a month of when it's due, you're going to get a letter from us, and we call it a NOPA. That stands for Notice of Proposed Assessment. That's just a letter. Again, like Billy said, read our letters. If you see that Notice of Proposed Assessment, that means we didn't get something from you. Now, here's one thing that I'm going to call to your attention. If you get that letter and you think, well, I did pay, I did file, call us anyways, because it could be that somehow we have duplicate accounts for you in our system. That can happen. Sometimes it could be that you didn't pay enough or that something was wrong with your return and there was an adjustment made. Maybe you missed the letter about that or something. But if you see a letter that says Notice of Proposed Assessment that comes from us, reach out to us. Okay. If you just pay that amount on there is usually going to be an estimated amount that's due, not the actual amount. People get confused about that too. They think it's just a tax bill. Well, if you didn't file anything, it's just an estimate about what you may owe. If you pay that, it's not going to give you tax clearance. You still need to go in and file. It'll get collections off your back if you pay an amount, but it won't take care of what you need to take care of. Someone just said that they can't hear me. I don't know how to tell them what to do, but
I can hear you just fine.
okay. If taxes are overpaid, refunds or credits can be issued. It's a very easy process on TINTAP. Okay, good. Other people can hear me too. But more information about this in the tax compliance and collection process webinar. Again, this is not fun to talk about, but I recommend that everyone watch that 1-hour webinar, because that is the place where you want to do everything within your power to not wind up in that position, for sure. All right, this is my favorite part, all the different resources. So we're going to take you over to TINTAP here in a minute to talk about some more stuff about that. But the first thing I want to say about TINTAP, that is our online filing hub, so to speak. You can register for tax accounts there. Electronic filing for all Tennessee tax accounts is now available on TINTAP. That has been a process over about what's going on 6 or so years now. We phased in the TINTAP. Excuse me for one moment. But now all taxes are available for filing on TINTAP and required unless you have a special exemption to not file online, which is very rare. There is a penalty for not filing online unless you have that special exemption. This is cool. Did you know that you can schedule payments in advance on TINTAP? You don't want to pay us any sooner than you need to, right? TINTAP will automatically show you when there's errors. A little exclamation point will pop up, just like any online process that you've gone through before. If you skipped a step, if there's a little something that had an asterisk by it that you were supposed to have answered yes or no to, but you didn't, it'll take you to it. It'll say, hey, we're missing something from you. You didn't do something. And that is huge. It won't let you make too many mistakes. I mean, if your numbers are messed up, that's on you. But you can also amend returns. You can access old returns, your certificates, licenses, letters, all of that on TINTAP. This is real important. We like to recommend that every business owner or taxpayer should have their own master level TINTAP account access. So even if you have a bookkeeper, an accountant, or somebody that handles all this for you, and I wouldn't blame you. But even if that's the case, you still need to be able to get in there and see that everything looks right. It's like online banking. You at least want to go there and see you're in the green, not the red, right? Or see that there's no alerts that you need to know about. A lot of people just don't want to deal with all that stuff. They want to put it over there and hire somebody to deal with it. Even if that's the case, you need to at least be able to look at it. Last year, right on like, I think it was on April 15th, I took a call or took a message, took an email from, read an email from someone. Their accountant had passed away and they had no access to any of their tax information. It was due day. So those things happen. And sometimes, like we were talking earlier, sometimes you think an accountant may be filing all your taxes, but maybe they're just filing F&E tax for you. And you've got years built up of nobody's filed business tax and the letters all went to an old address and you had no idea unless you got on TINTAP and looked. Okay. So if you're a business, that's another big takeaway I have for you today, is get your own TINTAP access. Now, if you have a accountant or a bookkeeper that set up master level access for themselves, we can fix that for you. It's a little more complicated and you have to reach out to us, but that is something that we can get fixed to where you have the master access. If you are the business owner, we can make that happen for you. So the resources I took you over earlier and showed you on revenue help, that there is a whole section that is dedicated to TINTAP. Just to give you an example here of what kind of information you're going to see in the general TINTAP how-to videos, you're going to see about creating a TINTAP logon, filing the sales tax and filing the business tax returns, how to log into TINTAP, how to gain access to another one of your accounts, gaining access as a third party. Now, when I mentioned earlier, when you start up a tax account with us, That does not necessarily mean, and if you have TINTAP access, that does not mean you're automatically going to see that tax account as soon as you log in. You've got to gain access to the account. At least that's the way things are right now. I've heard it discussed that that might change sometime in the future, but as things are right now, the first step is to create that TINTAP logon, and you can watch a video about that in our revenue help. Creating that logon. Once you get logged in, you're not going to see much at all because you have not gained access yet to your tax accounts, or maybe you don't even have tax accounts yet. You can do that on there too. All of that is discussed in these help videos and in these help articles. Our call center is very, very good at helping walk you through how to get set up correctly on TINTAP. If you get confused, it's pretty important that you're set up correctly in there. So if you do get confused, Dan is our assistant director over the call center. I think he would agree with this, that a lot of our questions come in about TINTAP and getting set up correctly on there. And we love to help you with that if you've got questions about that. So when you go into TINTAP, the TINTAP homepage, which we took you to a little while ago, there's this little chat bubble here. That's called the TINTAP Assistant. You can type in a question there if you've got a question about TINTAP. That little chat bubble looking thing is also available once you're logged in. This is the homepage, but even after you've put in your username and password and logged in, let's say you've gotten that far and have all that created, here's where you create it. But once you're into TINTAP and into your account, there's also the option to click on what's called the TINTAP Assistant. It's a bot. At this point, it's not a real person, but it will search all of our help articles to find the right answer for you. And if you don't get a correct answer, then that's where you can immediately just click to send us a message. And that's where a live person will reply to you and step in, intervene at that point and help you do whatever you need to do in TINTAP. Once you get logged into TINTAP, here's kind of just what it looks like. This person has already added access to a business tax and a franchise excise tax account, so you're seeing what it looks like. Here's where TINTAP Home is. Here's that little virtual assistant. Manage my profile. We had a webinar a few months ago about TINTAP basics. So I don't think I have a link to there on here, but you know how I think now how to get to our webinar library. If you want more information about navigating through TINTAP, that's a great webinar. Within Manage My Profile, that's where you can do all kinds of things like put your banking information in so that it's already in, plug it in there so it's there. You can add access to for other people to be able to access your TINTAP information, your assistant, your spouse, whatever. Lots of information you can update and manage in Manage My Profile. So from the TINTAP homepage, you're going to see a heading here where you see favorites, summary. It defaults to summary. There's an action center. You see a little superscript there. There's a few things that this person needs to look at in their action center. In the action center, let's see, I think, yeah, I'll show you that in a minute. We'll show you what's in there in a minute. Settings and more. So within this, and if you need to zoom a little bit, click the plus button if you need to see a little better. But so you can see this business tax account. There's no balance here. If there was money owed for this business tax account, you would see a minus, and then it would be in red. So again, can't stress enough having access, master level access to all your tax accounts, so that just periodically you may want to look in there, even if an accountant or bookkeeper is doing all this for you. You may want to just look in there periodically and make sure everything's green. But you can see here, make a payment, view file returns, additional actions and licenses. Most jurisdictions in Tennessee will load their business tax licenses into TINTAP. There are a few jurisdictions that do not. A couple of the big ones, Shelby, Memphis, and Davidson, Nashville, do not send their licenses through to TINTAP. But most of the others do, with some exceptions. You can actually print off a business license directly from there. The actions that are going to be available to you per tax account are a little bit different. You can see here under franchise excise, you don't see that there's a license option there because there's no franchise excise licenses, right? So just a little bit different information that you're going to get to once you click on additional licenses for the different tax accounts. That action center I was telling you about. So here's what it looks like. You're going to see if you have any unread messages. We mentioned earlier about keeping your address up to date with us. You also want to keep your email address up to date with us, so you'll get an email letting you know if we've got a letter for you. But even if you don't check that email or you can see the messages here. You can view important messages from us. You can see if there are balances due, and you can also see if there's any returns that need to be filed. This is just on Action Center. It's everything that requires your attention. All right, under the More, if you click on More from TNTAP Home, this is where so much can happen. First of all, I want to call to your attention because a lot of people overlook it. You can search here for whatever it is you're wanting to do. Just type in a key term and search for it to find where it might be. Or there's not, I like to recommend to people, just go in after you've added access to your tax accounts in TNTAP. Go click around and play around. Anything, you can't mess anything up that we can't fix. And also, if you to do anything that's going to really change stuff, you've got to go pretty far and submit and put a password in and all that. But if you just want to like take a tour of it and just click around and see what all is option to you, there's so much that you can do, so much self-service available to you in TNTAP with your tax accounts. You see here under Manage Accounts, if you need to zoom in a little bit, that's how you're going to add access to your accounts. So let's say you've only gotten as far as creating a TNTAP logon. So when you get to this page, you're not going to see any tax accounts listed here. You're going to see nothing. Even if you have tax accounts, you're not going to see anything until you add access, which is what you're going to do right here under More and then Manage Accounts, and you're going to say Gain Access to an account. To gain access, you are going to need a few key pieces of information like your tax account number and maybe a letter ID. If you've ever received a letter from us, that should be on there. But again, you can call us and we can help you with that. So yeah, just kind of looking around here, printing certificates, accessing letters. It's cut off here at the bottom, but submissions. A lot of times people think that they have submitted a return, but they didn't. They started it but didn't actually submit it. Submissions is a good place to go just to see. There's some confusion there sometimes. All right, so we're getting towards the end here. I'm going to go ahead and tell you now some ways to follow us and contact us. We keep talking about emailing us or calling us, so I'll skip to the bottom here. To email us, you send a message to revenue.support@tn.gov. To call our general tax line, it's 615-253-0600. And we have people answering these questions and answering the phone, available Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, and even actually now that we have remote workers that are on the East Coast and stuff. Sometimes they start even earlier than that. So but definitely between 8 and 4:30 Central Time. You can get a human to help you. And unless it's April 15th, it might take a little minute, take a while to get through to us on April 15th or on a major tax deadline. But for the most part, it's we get a lot of great feedback about how easy it is to get help on the line, get a real human being on the line for us. I'm going to recommend if you are on any social media that you do follow us. This is where either Facebook or Instagram, X, I'm still not used to saying that, LinkedIn. You can sign up for email updates from us following this link right here. You can follow us on YouTube, obviously our website that I've shown you about 1 million times today. If you're a business owner in this state, follow us or stay in touch with us in some way, shape, or form, because we do put out important information, especially around this time over the next couple months as the Tennessee General Assembly is wrapping things up and new laws are passing. Every year, new laws that affect taxes are passed, and that affects you. So follow us, stay in the loop, so that you know what's going on with that very important topic. All right, so I'm going to stay on this page right here for a little while Billy, if y'all want to address any common questions that have come about or anything that you want to add to this.
Well, we have still north of 150 people online with us, so that's a lot of people. And we had over 200 today, which is a great group. And we wanted to thank y'all for asking questions and being engaged in the class. We know there's probably some of these questions that we have not addressed in chat because of volume. So we apologize up front about that. And certainly Dan has done a good job of putting our email and our help support links out there and our phone number and stuff. And like Katie mentioned too, one really unusual thing about us is if you call us, did you know we'll actually answer the phone? How
That's
about
right.
that? And we get mad when people are put on hold. So,
We get in
you know,
trouble.
if you have to hold for more than 30 seconds or a minute, trust me, we know that and it makes us upset. Now, again, April 15th, different rule book because the world
Right.
explodes on April 15th in the tax business. And if you don't know that by now, you know it now. So anyway, we always do our best to try to answer our phone calls and emails quickly. So yeah, we'll be glad to
I
help you
just saw
guys
that
out.
someone said they couldn't, the link for signing up for updates didn't work. So I'm going to show you how to get to it.
Oh, go ahead, Katie. Sure.
Sorry about that. So I'm on tn.gov/revenue and you go to news and publications and then sign up for updates right here.
Yeah.
Click here. I need to fix that on our, and this is where you just put your email address and your name and click subscribe, and then you'll stay in the loop for anything big that happens. And we'll be sending out, like, as these laws are passing over the next couple months and we have governor signing new stuff into law, we'll create important notices, and then those will get sent out via this avenue right here. So,
Oh, somebody put something funny in chat.
okay, what is it?
Ed, that you're making me smile. It would be nice if the state of Tennessee would make this seminar mandatory prior to obtaining a business
That is
license.
good.
Okay, Ed, 1,000 bonus points for Ed because
Right?
a lot of us would agree with you on that. And I don't mean this in any offensive way to our business owners out there too. It's a lot, y'all. It just
It is.
is. And you're the ones that are going out and starting new businesses and are entrepreneurs and all this stuff. And I think that's fantastic. And we're here to help you be successful. But anyway, it is what it is. And Ed, I appreciate your comment. And
Jeremy sent in a little note as well. I've attended a few of these webinars, and this is the one I needed. First off, thanks. I'm glad you said that. Then it says a complete idiot's guide to state taxes. Thank you, Jeremy.
wait a
This
minute.
stuff ain't
Was he
easy,
talking
man.
about idiots? Are we talking about like
No,
us?
Jeremy. This is hard stuff. So
Yeah.
anybody, you're not a complete idiot if you're clueless and in the dark.
No,
This is
not at
hard.
all.
So
No,
I appreciate the comment, but you guys,
ignorance, being ignorant is not being like that. We're all
Right.
ignorant. I joke all the time. Katie has heard me talk about it before, and Dan too. We, all three of us on here, when we got jobs at the Department of Revenue, let me tell you what we knew about state taxes. How much, guys? Zero,
No.
nothing.
yeah.
All I
Nothing.
knew was that it was difficult having dealt with
Yeah.
friends and family going through starting businesses. Everybody said, "Oh, this is awful."
Right.
Yeah, and you guys are busy running businesses. Y'all shouldn't be geniuses on this stuff.
Right.
Y'all have more important things to do. So
Exactly.
thank
Go
you for
earn
doing
some
what you
money.
do.
Yes. Go be rich. Right. That's exactly right. Um, again, thanks again for joining us. And again, if we've missed your question, Katie's got the information up there one more time. Hit us up. We're a little bit behind the email. We'd like to get the email within 2 hours. That's not happening right now because of the large number of people that are wanting to switch their business license status over because of the $100,000 change that Katie mentioned. But nevertheless, if you put it in the queue, we'll work it. I promise you. If you
Yep.
want to get help a little quicker, you might call the phone number. It's okay. We're going to get to you. We have plenty of time. Trust me. Okay.
All
So,
right.
Katie, do you have any other comments or anything?
No, thank you all for being with us today. Thanks, Stan and Billy, for handling the chat. And hopefully this was helpful to you. And join us again for the next one, and definitely for these monthly webinars that we've got. Most of them, not all will be relevant to everyone, but every once in a while there might be one that you'll find is relevant to you. Just keep abreast of those. And again, if you sign up for updates, we'll let you know what the upcoming ones are. So, all right. Well, thanks everyone. You have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.